All right, so Julius Caesar, Act 1, how does it go? Okay, so Act 1, Scene 1. So we start out with Morellus. Whoops, wait, it's Flavius, and is it Marcellus or Morellus? I'm going to put that. And these two men are part of Pompey's army. And this is right after the Civil War between Pompey and Caesar, which Caesar wins in Greece. So Pompey flees after Caesar wins. He goes to Alexandria in Egypt, and he's murdered, stabbed in the back. And thus, Pompey, who was endorsed by the Senate to defeat Julius Caesar, because Julius Caesar was kind of a man of the people, whereas Pompey was a man of the Senate. So these men come to town and they see everybody celebrating because Caesar is having what's called a triumph. And a triumph was whenever there was a great victory that a general had, he was allowed to parade through town with all the things that he won. So, for example, the slaves he captured, if it was like a war in Africa, they would go through with elephants, and so on. So it was a huge parade. And so Caesar comes in triumph. Everyone's having a party. They're all really happy. And Flavius and Morellus, because their boss was murdered, are very angry at the people. And they basically do two things. Number one, they tell all the people to go home. And of course, these are armed soldiers, so nobody's going to tell them no. And number two, they go around and they knock the decorations of statues. They knock the statue decorations that Caesar has down. Okay. Very short scene. There's kind of the humor with the Cobbler, and this is kind of used to, there were two types of people in every Shakespearean play. They were the lower class people that were in the middle, right in front of the stage, and then the higher class people that were in the balconies around that actually, had protection from rain and whatever. But you always wanted to play to the lower class people as well, because you wanted to have them come to your plays. And so you see that a lot with Julius, like Romeo and Juliet. You have the nurse, and the nurse is someone who's kind of low class, and she makes a lot of jokes, and that helps her to identify, or helps the lower class to enjoy the play more. Well, it's the same thing with the Cobbler in Scene 1. He's kind of low class. He makes a lot of jokes. The soldiers don't really understand him, but eventually they catch on. And so this is to help, like I said, the lower class kind of go, oh, this is funny. So Scene 2. This is the more important scene. You've got Cassius, who is the brother-in-law by marriage to Brutus. And Cassius's sister, Portia, is married to Brutus, a very noble woman. So Cassius is kind of conniving, like he's said to be a thin man because he doesn't enjoy drink or eating or getting fat. So he's not able to be bought off. Julius Caesar notices this. And Cassius, the things that he wants is for his own good, whereas Brutus wants everything for the good of the Roman people. He's a bit different like that. And so basically you've got the Colosseum, which was like a normal part of Roman society. Of course, later you had the gladiators there, but at the beginning you had horse races, chariot races, and so on. And so they're about to have a race for Lupercal. And Lupercal was celebrating the lupus, or the wolf, that was the female wolf that nursed the two sons of Rome, Romulus and Remus. So the whole point of it was that since it was a fertility festival, you had men that would run around and they would touch the women as they ran, and apparently that would cure their infertility. So Julius Caesar and his wife, what was her name? I just drew a blank. Calpurnia, go inside to see the races. Cassius and Brutus stay outside, and Cassius at first very lightly touches on and then starts to become more and more aggressive about having Brutus join this conspiracy to murder Julius Caesar. At first he refers to himself as a mirror, reflecting Brutus's own unhappiness with Julius Caesar. And this continues, and Cassius notes that Caesar has epilepsy, that Caesar is kind of a weakling, that Caesar is not as strong as Cassius, and yet look at how huge of a person Caesar has become. And so Cassius makes this statement that it's not the fault of their stars, it's not astrology that determines their destiny, but what they choose to do. In other words, Caesar is going to go and murder Cassius is going to go and murder Julius Caesar because it's his choice. He chooses not to be a slave to Caesar. Okay? So then they come out. Caesar looks unhappy. And Casca, a fellow who is kind of a sarcastic talker, joins the two and tells them what had happened to what happened to Caesar. So Caesar had been given a crown 3 times by Mark Antony. He had refused it. And all the people thought it was so great. Oh my gosh, he's such a wonderful man who refused the crown. But all the people around Caesar are so smelly and so common and low class that when they go, they breathe up this horrible stinking air that makes Caesar fall down and have convulsions. And Casco literally was going to laugh at the whole thing, but he didn't want to open his mouth and probably receive the same fate as Caesar. So that's the end of scene 2. So scene 3 is the one that we just need to talk about briefly. So you have Cassius, and I believe it's Casca? It's Cinna or Casca? Is it Cinna? Okay. I didn't think it was Casca. So they are discussing all of these crazy things that are happening in Rome right now. So some of the crazy things that are happening is there's a lion in the marketplace. There's some slave that had a burning hand that did not actually burn. There was an army of ghosts. And there was an owl in the market at daytime. All very strange things. And while this is happening, there's all of this thunder and lightning that's around. Okay, just crazy thunder and lightning. And so Cinna says, like, oh, the world is going crazy. I wonder why. Something horrible is going to happen. And Cassius says, why does it happen? Because the world is angry at Caesar taking this throne. Okay, he says that's why the world's kind of in a mist. It's having all this kind of upheaval. It's because of Caesar. Cassius is kind of a weirdo too. So there's lightning, striking or whatever, and he goes up to the top of a hill and he opens up his robes and he goes, "Go ahead and strike me, man. Go ahead and hit me." And so he doesn't get struck, or else this would be a really short play. As far as I remember, that's scene 3. And I think Cassius, he meets with the other members of the conspiracy. And he tells them to throw in these little messages to Brutus, throw them in his window at night. Because the Roman home was quite open. It was a big block. It was a big block with slaves and so on in the back, and then the people who owned the house in the front. And they had usually one or two atriums. So they had open spaces where you could get the sun, the rain would fall, whatever. There's usually like a small garden there. And along the street, you have your windows and so on. And so someone could just throw messages in, which is what Cassius is doing, because Brutus loves the honor from the people. He wants to honor the people, the Roman people. So if he hears that the Roman people are saying, we want you to kill Caesar, we want you to kill Caesar, of course he's going to move and do that. Whereas Cassius is just doing it because he wants to kill Caesar. He doesn't like Caesar, and he probably wants to take his place as well. So those conspirators go and they throw messages into his house, and I believe that's the end of scene 3. So Act 1, scene 1, 2, and 3 explained.